Hello and welcome back to the Pinnacle Stack. Today we are joined with STYKO and we're going to be discussing a few of the recent tournaments that happened, a few that are coming up. But STYKO, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me. Looking forward.
And as you'll see, we got Hawker back with us again. He's finally moved. So Hawker, how stressful was it?
Yeah, it wasn't great, but listen, I'm here now. The room actually looks pretty nice. It looks like I've got somewhat of a setup. I got some fake flowers over there just for the occasion. So yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, a bit better than the one picture in the background that you had before.
Exactly.
It was a bit more homely. So yeah, we're just going to kick this episode off. Just now we've got STYKO with us to ask a few questions. So I've been watching across most of your content over the last few weeks, especially your Twitch streams, which are you doing your player reviews on a Monday, I believe you've been doing those. So they've been really good. But one video that I wanted to ask about because of something that you said in it, which was your benching video, you said that CS2 you feel it fits your playstyle a bit more. So I just want to ask you, what about the game actually fits your playstyle?
So it's not only the playstyle, it's the whole general concept of something new. I think I've been generally pretty good and open-minded about new stuff, whether it was anything in CSGO related and now the whole new game. I wasn't really, being stubborn to learn new things or trying to complain way too much. If anything, it was usually constructive and it went straight to the Valve's email inbox and with some kind of background notes that I found. And so the whole concept of new game, new mechanics in the game, new nades, new possibilities, it all kind of resonates with me in a nice way where I anyway spent a lot of time on a free, like on a server where it was just me and trying some other cool stuff or trying to copy it from the other players. So I'm very motivated and hardworking to this kind of sense. And then when it comes to actual play style, I feel like the game values like higher aimers, or I would say better aimers in a way, because the spraying is not that nice, it doesn't feel that nice, the movement is a little bit different as well. So what I was really good at usually in CSGO was like tapping, bursting, and just trying to move around the map. So I'm always trying to be in the correct spot, and this kind of allows me to be done in CS2 more, compared to CS:GO, when it kind of went from tapping in the early days. You remember, everyone remembers Scream, etc., to right now being fights, close range, spraying, and all this kind of stuff. So I really liked it, especially in the beginning of CS2 when everyone was queuing Premiere for the first time. Like everyone was just tapping because no one could ever hit a spray. And this is where I was really benched. This is the point of the time where I said, damn, this looks pretty nice. Like I love tapping. I love bursting. I love being like crosshair placement is something that I'm really diligent about. And I felt like it. And right now it kind of transformed into the way where I'm finding a lot of cool shit on empty server that I'm trying to, for now, I don't have a team. When I had a team and I did this, I was like, hey guys, come to the server. I want to show you something. Do you think we can implement it in these strats? And we shared it. But right now I don't have a team. So I'm doing I'm turning on the stream and I'm showing to viewers anyway. So it's like, I have to share it with someone, because otherwise I feel like, well, what's the point? Why did I find it? Like, I want people to know about it, use it. Maybe you will call it a STYKO smoke from now on. I don't know. Make my mark even though I'm benched. Like, I want to just do some cool stuff with CS2, and stream is now the only platform and content through YouTube that allows me to do it.
So if we take an optimistic approach to your situation, like having this time off, no distraction of competition, do you think that's an advantage to be able to prepare for when you finally find a new home?
Yeah, I think it's completely different lifestyle. Like my life turned 180 since the bench, because suddenly after 8 years of constantly being on the top team, uh, I even though when I was benched in Mousesports, I instantly came to Cloud9, and then after that I found another team, etc., etc., etc. So after 8 years, I'm finally like out of competition. I don't have daily practice with the team. I even forgot what it is to live stress-free life that right now I'm really experiencing. Like there's not much that bothers me. I'm really unhinged when it comes to all this stuff, because I realized all frustration and tilt and bad energy usually that I experienced in my life, even personal life, came from CS. Let's say we underperformed at the events, we underperformed in a practice, we had an argument within a team. Like it always came from like entity that wasn't me. It was like people around me. And right now I just don't have it. And it's such a liberating like part of my life that I'm living that it's actually I enjoy it. I miss the competition, don't get me wrong. And I understand like it's competitive, people are gonna get frustrated, it's okay. But I learned about myself that I'm really, really stable in mood and in mentality. And this is what I've been focusing on last few years when it comes to CS. And it now it pays dividends, obvious dividends. It paid dividends before because I was pretty good teammate, I would say, like consistent when it comes to comms and mood. But right now I can see it on myself very clear.
So with the content as well, because I've been watching some of your videos, you seem genuinely like passionate and happy about all the content that you're making. Like when I was watching your benching video and you talk about I'm going to be doing more content on this channel, like the smile that you have on your face, I mean, as someone who's in content, really excites me for what you're going to be doing over the the next weeks, months, however long it may be. And I just want to ask you, like, where does that come from? Does that span back to doing your interviews or further than that?
I think in general, I feel like sharing a knowledge is something that really I'm passionate about it. And first of all, I'm not gonna ever do something that doesn't make me happy. So if content is what I'm doing, you can bet that it makes me happy and makes me fulfilled. People commenting on the videos, watching the videos, they're writing nice stuff or a feedback or constructive criticism. I love it. I found a way where I always focus not on the goal, what I'm trying to make with the content, or what the goal is with the team when I was on a team, but rather to focus on the journey, on the process, to enjoy it, because that's going to be the majority of my days. If I don't enjoy the process, I'm just going to burn myself out. Like there's no point. And content is the very same way. Like I don't even have like set goals when it comes to content. Like I want to hit this kind of subscribers, I want to hit that. Like no, that's really not the point. What I really enjoy doing is perfecting the videos, making scripts a little bit better, making research a little bit better, making edits a little bit better, and then publishing the videos that people generally get something out of. Because what I'm doing is I'm trying to be someone that I wish I had found when I was 18, 19, 20, when I was at the start of my career. Because back then, there was very limited content when it comes to how to improve, how to maintain your career, how to become better, how to work in a team environment, how to work individually. All this kind of stuff I learned over the years. Right now I feel like it's my duty to share it with others. And I would be doing this even if I was on a team or not. I was just doing like a little bit less because I would have less time. I wouldn't have time to publish like 3 videos a week, obviously. But sharing the knowledge is something that really fulfills me. And content is the perfect tool for me to share it through.
So with all the educational content that you've been doing, has it sparked any thought in your head about potentially joining a team in a different role outside of being a player?
Not really. Actually, if you're suggesting a coach position or analytic position, I don't really think so, because first of all, I'm still hungry when it comes to competition. The fire is still inside of me, and I understand that right now I'm not the hottest prospect on the market. Like I've been not performing very well, and this is what I'm using to actually improve individually. So I'm having like different sets of routines, different sets of like practice that I'm doing every single day despite not being on the team. I'm putting a lot of effort into CS2 anyway. So that's the first thing. Second thing, if I ever retire or if I ever want to like stop competing or being on a team, it's going to be due to stress and pressure, and I want to just have a different way of living. And being a coach, I feel, is even more stressful than a player in a sense, because you're like in this constant limbo of having a lot of responsibilities, different sets of responsibilities as well, different set of skills you need to maintain. You're a connection between the team, the roster, and the management, which is another like dynamics which I'm not really comfortable with, like negotiating and talking, like backing up players instead of like going against your boss, etc. those are difficult talks. I don't think I'm well equipped to handle those. And analyst again is a thing where it's a lot of grind. I wouldn't feel like a sense of achievement even if we win thanks to my analysis or something. I want to be present on the server, on the events, on just being with the team. And it's a really grindy position. Like you have to sometimes your team goes across the world to compete. They get an opponent in the evening, and in the morning they have to play. You have to spend the whole night basically just anti-stratting, and it might come to like point where it was counterproductive. Something you did was not really a good read. There's a lot of, again, responsibilities, different responsibilities you have to take, and I don't see myself really in these positions. So I would love to play, and if there's no space for me, I kind of understand it, but then it will make my motivation to just prove those teams that they made a mistake signing someone else.
I feel like you'd sit there almost just like so eager to get back in, like seeing some of the players in the server, after you've analyzed things, you just want to be there playing with them. And I'm sure maybe you've had similar experience with Apex as of late, looking at them and being like, this is what I could have done in this situation or in this position. But I just want to ask you as well, on the inverse of the earlier question about how it fits your player style, and I'd also like to get Hawker and Brand's takes about this after yourself, but are there any players that you feel that the new style and the new way that CS2 is played, that it doesn't fit them at all?
I think there's like the obvious answer to this would be just to compare the statistics between end of the CSGO and the start of CS2. Some players are just making terrible transition period, and it shows. At the beginning, there were opers where they struggled because people couldn't figure out how to hold angles. Right now, it's getting a little bit better, but it's still rough. Apparently, LAN Counter-Strike right now is different, feels different compared to online. So I can't compare. I have never played LAN yet in CS2, so that might be a factor. And then players that are generally like being really sneaky, let's say playing around the smokes, and yes, some players love to do it, and the whole dynamic of their playstyle is just changing, and it might affect them, and it's affecting them. Like I see, even for example in our team in Apex, Sasanito is struggling with the transition. You can see it a little bit on the stats as well, but I don't like just raw stats comparing to each other. I can see it in his confidence on his server, like the way he talks, even in voice comms videos. Like I can feel something's off, and he's not really comfortable with the transition. And I'm sure that he is not lonely player in this. Like there's a bunch of them, one in probably every team, besides FaZe, obviously. But and some of the top teams who adapted faster, those are having good time. But even Brokey, for example, I feel like Brokey is not as impactful as he was in CSGO, even though he has like good stats, etc., etc. You can feel something's off. So you can't really point the finger there, but something's off.
How about you, Hawker?
Oh, what for yeah, I think pretty similar for the players struggling to transition. Weirdly, for whatever reason, like Nico has not really been that good, and there's some players like that where I don't really understand why they're not as good yet. Maybe it's just so early that we don't have enough sample size to tell. But yeah, I generally agree. It seems like AWPers. It's just maybe a little confusing. Like I can't really see a massive trend for riflers. It's just like AWPers. Generally, most of them seem to have got a bit worse, except for maybe Monacy. When he was playing at Sydney, he was crazy still. But riflers, I don't really have as good of a read on. I think what STYKO said makes a lot of sense. There were a lot of players that would really specifically know one ways or ways to play around smokes, but yeah, overall, like I guess maybe aggressive riflers are the ones that are transitioning best in general, but I don't think there's like one constant theme from what I'm seeing.
How about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of similar sentiments. I think what's interesting is just kind of the way angle holding has really been adopted and molded, even in like the last couple of events. It's like from Sydney, it's like, okay, we definitely can't hold an angle now, and we're moving to CAC where and even just in the tier 2 tournaments, I'm seeing a lot of specifically like some of the younger explosive guys like on Team Spirit and on like Bet Boom. The way they're holding angles, like they are strafing so much more to kind of just, they're always on the move. It's kind of like they're like trying to keep their feet warm almost, but it's just to make sure that they are definitely changing their hitbox all the time, just in case to make sure that they aren't being overwhelmed. I think it's really interesting. I think with the AWPA conversation, I think it comes back to as well, those AWPAs that can also rifle are definitely feeling a lot better rather than like over reliance on just the AWP in general. But I think what we are seeing is obviously we're going to get inconsistencies between events because of different updates, but also just inconsistencies because maybe of just trying to try new things out constantly. I think the one for me that I've actually been the most interested in following recently is probably Mantu from Big, because there are some maps in CS2 where that guy is incredible. I think Vertigo in particular, on CT side, Vertigo, he can set himself up. And I feel like CT side as well, it's a trend where if you got an aggressive AWPer and you can set yourself up on an angle, they're going to succeed a lot more times than not because they've got the advantage and they've basically got it already mapped out in their head how they want to take the angle, when they want to take the fight, set the entire terms of the engagement. And I feel like that's where you're going to get the best out of players in CS2 at the moment, where they've kind of got a roadmap of where they want to be in the round, how far ahead they've kind of like foreseen where they're going to be adjusting, and kind of what the backup plan is if it doesn't really go right. And Mantu is a really good case study for that, in my opinion, because CT side Vertigo, he gets like 20 kills, maybe a half sometimes. And then on T side, where he is taking that aggressive peak, but there are some different limiting factors because of the game, I feel like he actually struggles quite a lot. And it's really interesting just kind of watching his demos.
There's a player for your Monday streams there, STYKO. Man,
Yeah, I'm noting it down right now.
Okay.
Have you taken a look at any AWPers on there?
Any AWPers? You mean?
Yeah, have you taken a look at any on your Monday
Oh,
streams?
I don't really watch AWPers that much because, as I said, what I'm trying to do is on after new week starts, I'm taking a look at the previous week and I'm trying to take like some kind of best performing players out of recent events. And as we said, AWPers are not really it right now. They're not really feeling it. So I'm mostly, it's what people want to see, and usually people want to see riflers because AWPer is just one guy on the team, so they're gonna get overvoted by people wielding AKs and M4s most of the time. So I'm watching mostly people that I can speak about, that I can share my inside knowledge as well, because I used to be an anchor / lurker. I love to watch those. So we're focusing, like I'm focusing on Robs lately, right? Because he's been amazing in the transition. Imp had lately at CAC that we're gonna talk about later. People and players like even Floppy had like a really good kind of integration into CS2. So people and players like these are something that, first of all, I watch, I learn from them, and then I share my knowledge because I've been in their shoes in a lot of situations that they are playing. So I'm kind of trying to read their minds and then translate it to the viewer in a way that is like comprehensible.
I think as well with the AWPer situation, we'll speak about it a bit more in a little bit with CAC, but I think it takes like 12 players in the overall statistics of players, like top players at the event, for another player other than Device to pop in that's an AWPer. So it's quite a large sum compared to what you'd usually see, where there'd be 3 or 4 in the CSGO events. But we'll discuss that a bit more as we move on. But I want to take this back a little bit because I also saw your video on Rapid Trigger. And I just have a few questions about, like, we're going to get a bit nerdy here and a bit techie, but about like technological advances in, well, to equipment and to peripherals. And I want to ask with Rapid Trigger specifically, and for people who don't know what that is, if you could briefly explain, like what kind of impact do you think that will have on players?
Yeah, so first of all, I haven't tried a lot of like techie nerdy gear throughout my career because in CSGO and in CS in general, we're all very adamant about consistency and sticking to your gear. Like, we don't switch our gear as a pro players that often compared to, like, let's say Valorant or Fortnite or something like that. So we keep getting stuck in the limbo of same, let's say, peripherals, same type of mouses, same type of like manufacturers, and that's all right. But now that I've been benched, I have this pleasure and time to test out new stuff that I've been, missing out on. Rapid Trigger was one of them. Rapid Trigger keyboards, basically what it does, I will try to put it in very bare bones. It's difficult to explain in bare bones, especially with my vocabulary, so I'm sorry, but I will try my best. But basically, as you press the key, it triggers very like sensitively, so the actuation point gets pressed almost immediately. So if you want to like move forward and press W, you will start moving as soon as you basically touch the W key. So if you want to release it and stop, you don't have to release it all the way back up to stop, but as soon as you release it just by 0.1 millimeter, as you start releasing it, you instantly stop. This helps incredibly in Counter-Strike because of counter strafing. So the rapid trigger kind of like helps you it doesn't counter strafe for you. No, don't mistake it for it. It doesn't do this for you. You have to still practice it, but it helps you a lot because the delay between what you want to do in your brain and the actual game that goes through the keyboard input is minimized. And it's kind of a big deal, and a lot of players like it. Some players don't like it yet because there's like new switches that you have to get used to, and obviously the click is different and the whole feeling of using the immersion is different, and that's all right. But maybe in the future we will see that actual usual switches that people are used to, like you and I was for years, they will have this rapid trigger feature, and I'm looking forward to it because it's very early days, and it's one of the many things that are very interesting to talk about. And even though I didn't have too much knowledge about it, it was very easy for me to get into it. One of the things, for example, is I'm using right now a glass mousepad. I don't have a normal fabric mousepad as everyone usually uses to travel to events, but I have a glass, and I was like, what the hell, is glass really going to help me? And I've been loving it. I've been using it for a month, and it's really, really nice experience. But again, if I was a pro player, I wouldn't do this, because like, what, am I going to take a glass mousepad to an event? Am I just going to travel with it? It's going to break. And once I get there, there's no way for me to buy a new one. So it's very risky. But since I'm home right now, I get to try this cool stuff, and I've been enjoying it. I've been trying to share my notes with it as well. So whenever someone asks about it, I have my opinion ready in case they want to buy.
A glass mousepad sounds insane. I can just imagine someone turning up, it just cracked all in their bag.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it doesn't sound very very viable for pro players traveling all the time. But another question I want to ask, and this really depends on whether you've had a chance to test out 540 hertz monitors. But do you think that when they become norm, that the leap from like 360 to 540 is going to be as noticeable as what we've had before with 60 to 144 or 144 to 240?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a chance to try it yet, but obviously it's going to change a lot of things. The technology advances further and further. That's normal, but I don't think we will see a use of it until we will manage to somehow get a peripherals like GPU and CPU that is capable of giving us like 600 stable FPS in the game, and that we are really far from because of optimization and performance issues the CS2 brings. Even me myself, I'm struggling to get like consistent 400 sometimes, right? So for me, getting 5 whatever hertz monitor, 500 whatever, it's kind of counterproductive. Instead, you would spend that money to upgrade your GPU or CPU, and even if you get best on the market, you're still not bound to have that 500 FPS stable. So we will just have to wait for other peripherals to be better and advance in the research, and then we will kind of think about higher hertz monitor, higher frequency.
Or we could get Valve to optimize the game better. That's the other option. But, who knows on that?
Yeah,
that might be another email to send. What peripherals are you running?
So I'm doing Rapid Trigger keyboard, still Series 1 Apex TKL Pro. Just a Razer mouse. I mean, that other V3 Pro. I've been Razer user for when it comes to mice for a long period of time, And then the glass mouse pad that I mentioned, I'm having a sleeve here that I'm ready to pop on whenever I play, because on the glass mouse pad you have to have a sleeve, otherwise your hand will stick, to the. It's not going to be smooth, especially for me where I'm like elbow on the mouse pad and then I use whole arm to aim, so it gets very like rubber banding on the mouse pad, so it's very bad experience without sleeve. So I had to buy this instantly.
That can't be fun. It's summertime.
Yeah,
yeah, you just
and then just standard stuff when it comes to computer. So we monitor like 360 hertz, and it's all the tournament standard, I would say. So whatever I have on tournament, I'm trying to have at home as well.
Dude, this is like, I just realized this is fully just like the gamer version of showing someone around your house, that MTV Crib show. Except you just go straight in. This is my gaming setup, boys. Here we go.
I'm not sponsored by any of them to say it, but like I'm using it and I'm happy with how it goes so far. So
not sponsored, but if they do want to send you stuff, that's all good.
Some companies actually send me stuff for free because they saw the review that you mentioned, the Rapid Trigger, and they send me like, hey, I think we did it better. Here's the keyboard. And I know like tomorrow or 2 days, Razer will send me their Huntsman, and then they want a feedback on it. So they value my feedback because I'm digging into it. I'm using it daily. I'm using it on professional level, but also now on more casual level, and that kind of gives me leverage to talk about it to the companies where they value my opinion, and I'm happy to give it. Like as soon as the product is good, I will be happy about it. If it's bad, I will tell them, guys, you need to fix this before you actually launch it to the market. Like I'm this open about it. I'm very transparent about it as well.
Have you actually noticed a difference from switching to Rapid Trigger compared to like whatever mechanical keyboards? I mean, when I first got into keyboards, I just thought that the switches were some click louder than others, and that was about it. So it's all still a very new space, I think, for a lot of people that play VC.
I did notice the difference. It was the difference as you would, let's say, upgrade 60 hertz monitor to 144 hertz. At first, you're like, wow, and then you kind of can't go back, right? But I know a pro player. I don't want to mention his name because he's not sponsored by any Rapid Trigger keyboard company, but he tried it for a few weeks and he said, I actually have competitive advantage. Like he tried it in practice and he said, like, this is new thing. This is going to be huge. And I feel like I have competitive advantage. And it's not like I'm talking about some random guy in tier 3. This is tier 1 player, appeared in top 10 of HLTV for a couple of years. He knows his stuff.
Yeah, that sounds. It's almost like performance enhancing drugs at this point. The advantage that you might get over the other.
That's what monitors essentially are. When you look at the frequency, like if you don't have 360 monitor right now, you're in competitive disadvantage. You're like you're objectively worse player.
Do you see a real difference between 240 and 360?
Yes, I do, and I don't know how people don't. I don't know how people say they don't, because I can immediately see on bootcamp, for example, we had in Apex in Oslo, for a long time, we had 240 hertz monitors. At home, I had 360 hertz. And before the bootcamp for 2 weeks, I had to set my home monitor to 240 hertz. So the jump between me traveling to the bootcamp and coming home wasn't as different. So when I was juggling between Slovakia and Norway. So I had to change it. And I see it instantly, not even in game. I can just hover my mouse in the desktop and I see that the mouse has like a clone mouse following it, and it's like not as smooth. Like I see it instantly.
Do you think casual players will get that same immediate like impact that you did from it, like being able to tell the difference as well?
I can't really put myself into the shoes of casual player, so take it with a grain of salt. But I'm gonna say, don't expect the same difference as if you upgraded from 60 hertz to 144. That's gonna be the biggest jump of your career, or casual career, if you want to say. Then 144 to 240 is still a big difference, but it's less noticeable. And then 240 to 360, if you're a casual, I wouldn't say it's worth it.
Hawker and Brandon, have you guys had a chance to, like, what monitor do you play on? Have you seen a difference by upgrading?
Yeah, I mean, I can say this. Yeah, I bought a 360 hertz monitor maybe like 2-3 months ago, and I can't see it on the desktop. I'm not that cool, but in game I've got better. So I think I like the difference because I'm better. But it's obviously not a great difference. I feel like I'm more consistent. I think that's the difference. And I don't know whether it's because that's placebo and I've been playing a bit more Counter-Strike, but since swapping monitors and upgrading Hertz, I have felt like I am more consistent from game to game, which was something that I was kind of struggling with a little bit before. So we'll credit the Hertz and we'll say that's the reason. I was also laughing at the keyboard thing you were saying about like the switches, and you were like, "Oh, I only just thought that it was like different noises," and I was just sat there like trying not to say anything because that's what I thought they were. So I'm outing myself there. I don't know the difference between like the hyper trigger stuff. So it's really interesting, kind of listening in to what it's all about and the fact that players can gain like a competitive advantage from like a different switch. Like it's really wild.
How about you, Ilko? What are you playing on?
Yeah, just 240 hertz. I think when I go to events, they give us like a PC setup in our room, and I think they do give us 360. I'm trying to remember. Either way, it's like I think the biggest difference there is probably being on like a new PC, which just gets stable FPS, because mine does go up and down. I think that's like so huge, actually. Yeah, I actually am really interested in the whole the fact I haven't heard much more about these switches, because I just think in CS, one of the great things about CS is how important the minutia of that movement is to outplay your opponent. Like that's kind of what makes a lot of people love CS, I think, compared to other games. Like in a MOBA, you can't really 1v1 outplay your opponent oftentimes. You just get these massive team fights, and it's not as easy to do it. But the fact that more people haven't caught on to this is maybe a bit surprising, because it's really important, like you said, to have, even if it's like milliseconds of difference in your movement, it actually can be so huge in like a 1v1 where you're trying to outplay. So that's definitely something we've got to keep an eye on in the future for sure.
It's a new thing, though. It's a very new
Okay.
thing. So it wasn't even at EPL in Malta in the September. I saw very few mechanical,
Right.
I mean, rapid trigger keyboards being used. And even when I saw it, I was like, "What is that keyboard? Like, I've never seen that before." And then later, when I decided to make a video about it, when I learned about it, I did the research and I was like, "Oh, this guy was using it," but he was only guy in whole our group that we played. So it was one guy out of 8 teams, and yeah, as I said, it's very early. So a lot of pro players, when I made that video, they even came up to me and they said like, "Wow, I didn't even know about this." So you're in the boat of knowing one of the first, I would say, so we can still jump on the hype train of
Wait,
rapid.
Okay,
you can gain your elo now if you make that purchase early. Yeah, I think that monitors are like, they're the big thing for players, aren't they? I will discuss duel right now and tell you that when I was in my transition phase between my parents' house and I went to live with my girlfriend for a bit, I played on an ultra wide. Yeah, it was terrible, completely terrible. When I managed to buy my house, I thought, okay, I'll purchase a 360 hertz monitor, and it took me, I think, a month. It might have been the stable internet as well, but a month to get from 2K elo to 3K elo. So, like, definitely could see like a jump between the two, which, you know, it's something that I
Man.
think people will definitely get an advantage from doing, even if it's just going from like 60 to 144. That's the biggest jump that I saw originally, when, because I was playing like on a 4K monitor at 60 hertz, just from the nature of film work and whatnot, and that was terrible. That was horrendous.
Damn, you didn't need to flex on us like that with the numbers. I've just said, "Oh yeah, I've become
It's
a bit
all
more
right.
consistent,"
I've lost
and the
it all.
guy
I've
goes,
lost all the elo now.
"Yeah, gain 1,000 in a month, like it's nothing, like fair." Yeah,
It was hell. Solo queuing, face it, was hell. But we got there. So I just want to ask you one final question before we move on to talk about some tournaments, because I see all the Supreme in the background and the amount of teams that you've been on. So of all the teams, what has been your favorite jersey?
The jersey, man. Oh, I want to say Cloud9 because it was just so sick, filled with a lot of sponsors that I have never thought I would, wear. Now, hindsight, one of them was U.S. Air Force, so I didn't know back then. But it was a Red Bull was there, so I was like, damn, I'm really sponsored by Red Bull. So Cloud9 in general was probably the biggest organization and most important part of my career, even though it was like such a short tenure and I was just on the loan. And the merch and jersey and everything around the logo, around the design, the professionalism of the whole team. I think it was very eye opening, and to this day, I was there in 2000, I think 18 or something. To this day, a lot of European organizations has stuff to learn from 2018 Cloud9. I can't imagine how much they advanced in 6 years, or even 5 years since then, and there's still organizations in Europe that are behind that. So I think NA organizations are doing a lot of things right, and it might backfire here, EG and stuff like that. But let me tell you, I was very happy there. There was literally no complaint that I had in those periods.
It's something
Actually,
that I kind of want. Sorry, go on.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Jumped in at the same time. Something I wanted to ask as well, and it kind of leads on nicely from that, is obviously a lot more teams in the last couple of years have gone European. And I know you've been a part of just European rosters for a large part of your career. What has been, do you think that that's given you obviously more of an advantage being able to swap over to European kind of rosters earlier? And would you say that each one you've kind of had a different learning experience from because of different personalities? Like, how does it work? Because do you take things from each team and incorporate them into the current roster you're in? Or is it kind of each one is almost like a blank slate just because of the diverse amount of countries and the nationalities of like all kind of meshing in and gelling together?
Yeah, I think it's been like a cumulative experience from every team that I've been part of. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 huge things that I'm always taking with myself, and I'm making sure that I want this to be happening in my future team, and I don't want these things to be happening at all. Like, they are deal breaker to me, and in that way, it kind of shapes me as a person, as a player. Like, I feel like I'm a valuable asset to a team that I'm gonna join, not only on the server but also off the server, when it comes to behavioral structure of the team and roles, not on the server but also off the server. Like, what are we good at, what are we bad at, what do we need to work on, what are the strengths of the personality, what are the weaknesses. So all these things, they all come into mind because international rosters, they are having a rough time in a sense where it's a different set of challenges that they're going to face compared to national teams. Okay, so national teams, they all probably live close by. They have different time hanging out with each other. Like, the cultural impact is so huge. The human aspect is so huge, and the human aspect is so hard to get on the same page in international rosters when you have players on the team that are all across the Europe, and sometimes even from different continents, right? So if you look at Vitality, for example, Apex said it many times on podcasts and on interviews, and even on Twitter recently shared it, that human aspect is the most important thing in a team, and it gets more difficult in an international team, but you have the luxury of more talent, so more players are able to fit the international teams because people know English nowadays to the extent where it's okay for CS. And if you think about Vitality, they have 2 French players, they had 2/3 Danish people in the team. Then they added Spinks from Israel, which is completely like different culture and everything. So it's kind of wild to think how the dynamics of everything has to change. And especially when Vitality was still French, he mentioned, I will quickly notice that when Misuta and Kyojin came into the lineup, like, they had incredible difficulties because they were very young, and all they really know how they became famous and they being picked up was through FaZe. That's all they played. They didn't have a team before. They didn't have LANs that they attended. Like, for the first time that Kyojin traveled in a train, he was like, what, 18 years old, and he was traveling to Paris for a bootcamp with Vitality. First time taking a train. Wow. In 18 years. And it was wild experience for everyone. And then imagine you come to the team where you spend 200 days per year on the road, traveling across the world, practicing daily, multiple hours, and you have to behave. You have to be a social being in the team. You have to be good friends in order to perform. And they just couldn't teach them. Like Kyojin and Misuta, they were both, Apex said it, like biggest reasons why they weren't successful with that team was because they came from FaZe It. He put it bluntly. But behind of the story is that they were just not developed humans, being social beings when it comes to understanding the team aspect and how to, work as a team.
Damn, nice. I also wanted to ask, because you are one of the unique players, I think, who's been around for a while and, like we were saying, in international teams. I wanted to ask, like, how much have you noticed, or were there, like, specific moments you noticed the pro scene really, really changing? Because obviously, I'm sure when you started, it was, like, nowhere near as professional.
Yeah, I think this whole credit goes to Astralis, and this is where they won 3 majors, and they. Yeah, I have so many. Like, I don't know where to begin because I know the story behind it. Like, I know Lars Robel, which now went to Falcons. He was coaching. He was performance coach of Astralis back then, and he said, "Guys, you already won a major. Like, what do you want to do next? What's your goal of the team?" And they said they want to win another one. They want to win a major. But Lars said, like, there's a lot of teams that want to do it, but why would you want to do it? Why is this your goal? And then they came up with a conclusion that they want to create an era, Astralis era. They want to create professionalism in the esports. They want to have a performance coach. They want to have a nutritionist. They want to become idols of the game. The way they work, the work ethic, the professionalism between the whole organization. And that's when they started working together. And that's when they really elevated the game, that every organization, only way to beat Astralis right now is to invest into staff, into better coaching, into better analytics, into making sure to treat it as a real sport. And if you're not going to do that, you're not going to beat Astralis. And obviously everyone wants to dethrone Astralis, and eventually it happened, but it took them 3 majors that they won to find a worthy opponent.
I just want to kind of come back to the point you were talking about with kind of having that human element in a team. How difficult is it to really strike a balance when you are on the road so much? Also, you're boot camping, you're playing with the guys kind of every single day in, day out, playing officials. How do you strike a balance between having time for yourself to kind of reflect on things and also just kind of decompress, but also maintaining relationships outside of the server so it can also help inside the server? What does that look like?
Honest answer, I don't know. The thing is, this is probably one of the biggest reasons that Apex fell apart after a major. I think we were kind of tired of each other and burned out. The mood in the team was just not good. The performance were not good. The practice we were doing, it wasn't good. And we were struggling a lot, and we knew about it. Like, the worst part is you know about the problem and you don't know how to fix it. And I wish I had known before. I still don't know to this day. And I think the person that would help us the most, and we said this to the organization as well, like we need a person that with a background, like a psychological background, to help us with this. We need to overcome this, and we need like a mental coach or performance coach or something, because we are not equipped to deal with this. This is not the problem on the server. This is not what we are good at. This is far greater problem that needs to be addressed, and we need help. And to the day I was benched in September, we didn't have this help, and it didn't arrive. And I know Apex maybe were trying to find someone, but I think it was just way too late, and we weren't prepared for the success that Major really gave us.
I just wanted to ask as well, to follow up based on what you just said there as well about the major. Do you think that getting that far in the major almost set an expectation on yourselves as a team that contributed to that?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think we weren't prepared for the success it gave us, the amount of invites, the skyrocket in the rankings. We were coming into the second part of the year after that major when we got Sasanito instead of JL. We were asking ourselves, what are our goals for the next season? Because there's no major. So obviously every time we said it's the major, but now there's not going to be a major. CS2 transition is going to happen. What is our goal? And the goal we said was that we will figure it out, but we want to get to as many tournaments as possible. And essentially, we got there because we were top 10 in the world. We will get all the invitations to the non-partnership events, obviously, because we're not a partner, but we will get to a lot of events. So we traveled to Gamers 8, we traveled to EPL, we traveled to IEM Sydney. Yeah, we had to qualify there, but we managed to. Then there's Elisa that their Apex is about to attend, and like they will get to this tournament, so we fulfill the goal. But once we are there, we don't really have a goal of getting to the playoffs, getting out of the groups. Like, we are there and then we bomb out last place because we feel like, yeah, mentally we're like, yeah, the job's done, like we're at the event. But really the major already gave us that, and we were really bad. Again, something that performance coach would help us with, to set up tangible goals that are achievable, and then also some intangible goals that are in the back of our minds to kind of know where we are sailing, to kind of steer the ship along the way, along the season that we're traveling. And it kind of backfired a lot, because first bad performance, coach Kuban got kicked out. Second bad performance, EPL, I got benched. Now Sydney was kind of bad performance as well from Apex, but they're, I don't know, the in the hindsight, like what's their position on changing the players, if they're looking for someone, etc., etc. So I you will have to ask them, but overall the team crumbled because of the major. That's what I feel like.
So do you think that like playing without the pressure of expectation is something that some of these up and coming teams can really take advantage of?
Yes, I think playing without the pressure and being an underdog is major advantage, at the cost of, if you're underdog, you're probably far down in the ranking than you're supposed to. So you will have to grind a lot as well through the online qualifiers, either open ones or closed ones. And it's a rough in that kind of sense. But it's easier when you actually get further. You have no pressure, and there is very easy upset potential, especially now with CS2, MR12. Best of ones, opening games in the tournaments. Once you get there, pretty good chance, even if you draw a good opponent, you can advance further than expected thanks to this. And then again, you beat, let's say, Navi in opening round because you, let's say, get a pistol round, get the 2 nice clutches, and then you win. Or they have let's say, a coach that he needs to stand in for. You will win that game, and then suddenly you beat a top 5 team in the world according to rankings, and you're going to skyrocket up into like top 15, where you can kind of hover and maintain and stabilize.
So I want to move on. I think we could talk to you all day about everything CS, but I am conscious of time and we have events to discuss. So unless there is anything you are eager to ask STYKO, Hawker and Brandon, then we will move on to CAC.
No, that's like some questions, but they kind of tie in with events, so we can just move on.
Yeah, I felt it's the same for me going forward. One thing I just want to lay out that I think was really interesting for me is, I might have the numbers wrong as well, but it should be close enough. FaZe earned, I think it was $600,000 from 3 events, compared to their $425,000 that they earned across CSGO for the entire of 2023, which is ridiculous that they've managed to break that already. I think one thing that plays into this is that CS2 being released, everyone wants to get on early, get events out. And I mean, some of the prize pools have been insane. Thunderpick, when we discussed it, Brandon, I mean, I think I said to you then, I did not realize that was a $500,000 prize pool event, especially for an online event.
That whole circuit was 600K, because it was the 4, like 2 Europe, 2 NA, which were 25K each, and then the main event was 500,000. Yeah, so a lot of money. Yeah,
it does exclude the Intel Grand Slam, but for obvious reasons, like, you're probably best to exclude it from that. They did start it the year prior, so it took them a long time to complete that. So just on FaZe, they won CAC. They've won there's only one S-tier event that
IEM Sydney.
Yeah, so they won Sydney, they won Thunderpick, and now they've won this China.
Yeah, there's discussions
about
that,
right?
there's discussions about whether people are counting the Thunder Pick one because it's online. I feel like you do count it because it's still a $500,000 event. There's still very good teams at that event, and sure, I don't know what your take on this is, STYKO, but like it's still, although it is an online event, like it's still got a lot of prestige. I think like you can kind of hold it maybe like in a similar regard just because of the prize pools.
I think it should be counted as well. Like as well as we said, like it kind of shows how competent they are and all around well designed team, because they won, as we said before, CS2 on LAN is different than online. And if they're managing to win these LANs, sometimes with ease, they are also able to do it online. So they clearly they're clearly the best team in the world right now. And that's why I think they deserve to be called that they won 3 events in a row.
And what I noticed as well, unfortunately, I didn't get to catch much of CAC due to the time zone differences. But what I noticed as well when I did get a chance was that FaZe just have an unbelievable ability to come back in any game. And I feel like what separates them at the minute, I'll have to get your guys' takes on this, is that they make it so difficult for other teams to close as opposed to, them struggling themselves.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, oh man, I'm not gonna lie, especially because it had to be Ents again, didn't it? Who had the massive lead. Like, I don't know what's going on there. And to be fair, they had the whole stand-in situation, so they probably weren't expecting to beat FaZe. But you sit there and you're like, oh man, Ents, don't let this happen again. Of course, it happens again. And then yeah, the Mouse one as well with the crazy overtimes. It's just this weird scenario where. We're right at the start of CS2. We know that the major's not for a while, and the team that's winning all the events is a team where the rumors are the roster is not going to stay together. So there is part of me that's almost a little bit sad where I'm like, I don't think a few years from now people will really remember this that well. I think they'll just be like, oh, well, that was just FaZe at the start of CS2. The game transitioned. It wasn't even their proper lineup. And it might just all be forgotten about, when I think they actually, like STYKO said, deserve a fair bit of credit for what they're doing right now, because it's been a really good transition from them. And yeah, when you watch them play, like it looks like they've adapted really well. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have put FaZe top of that list when you have Carrigan in there, when you have Rain in there. People assume players like this would actually not be able to transition. And I mean, Rain, I think, is still really good. Carrigan, still pretty much same as what you'd expect. It's all working well.
And because I've seen you reviewing a lot of ROPS, STYKO, do you think ROPS is currently the best player in CS2 at the minute?
He is definitely, and I think a lot of credits what FaZe is doing in the game by, let's say, calling and micro plays goes credit to him. They have a lot of cool smokes that they found. They have, obviously it gets stolen right after they use it once, or maybe it was stolen even prior to the events because they have to scrim, and they will use it in scrim, and then one team will steal it, and then it kind of like chains into everyone. But I do believe a lot of cool shit that they found was because Robs is very much like me, like to spend a lot of time on the empty server, brainstorming stuff, look for stuff, and try to implement it into the game if it's useful enough.
And I think it's one of those things as well. I mean, at least for me, it feels like if FaZe do lose this player, that the way that Astralis almost ended their own era by not attending events when the whole Blastralis thing happened, I feel like it's a similar thing. If FaZe are this good, could they establish an era? But are they going to kill that early by removing a player? But I want to feed back into something that I was talking about earlier with the ratings of players and how within the top 12 of that event, there's only one AWPer, and then it's Head Trick, I believe. So I just want to get your guys' opinion on, we'll start off Brandon, what is it about AWPers or the AWP itself that is making it so difficult?
Well, I think the main one in early events is I don't know whether this was disproved or whether this was right, but you saw all that stuff on Twitter, right, about the fact that the AWP's inaccurate when you took damage. I mean, if if that was true and it wasn't just like someone just saying that online, then that's going to have a massive effect in it. I think also just think about the impact of the AWP. I think it actually just trains into the economy as well. Think about how many times you're seeing actually a full buy where you've got all of the nades, all of the guns that you would want in a game right now. I think it's really hard. I think it's very difficult on the CT side, especially to, if you lose pistol, you lose the first gun round. It's really difficult to recover economically. And I don't want to put all the faults of like the game out there, but I feel like economy is really hampering some of these matches because we're not seeing a large amount of gun rounds, a large amount of the AWP in a match. Say you've got 24 rounds and maybe you're using the AWP 2 or 3.5 sometimes, where if you're not finding that success, suddenly it becomes a lot more impactful when you do have it, and you need to almost go for, I guess, more aggressive plays to potentially have impact because of the limited time you've got on it. I feel like that's the one interesting thing that's been for me, especially when I've been watching some of the tier 2 games, the amount of times where we'll even go a half and we won't see an AWP come out at all, and that will be either a decision economically or it'll be a decision tactically, where it's like we don't actually need to use the weapon at the moment because of the way the game is. We can be a lot more aggressive, we can be a lot more fluid with 5 rifles. So I think economy does have a big part in it, though.
Is there any way that you think the economy could be fixed? Like, I mean, it's obviously a very broad question, and there's a lot that you probably could do to it.
I think there's definitely a man more qualified to answer this than I am. However, what I would say is maybe you just adjust kill reward with guns, or you add money for defusing the bomb on CT side. Like you get the different variables with planting the bomb on T side, and whether it explodes, you get more money, or if you even plant the bomb, you just get 300 additional. I feel like if you defuse the bomb, maybe there should be like a team bonus for CT, something like that. Maybe like not as crazy as it is in hostage mode, where like if you get the hostage out, you get money per team bonus. But maybe it's something like a little bit lesser than that, because I feel like CT buys are always lacking either. I think the CT buys are compromising. You're either lacking a couple of pieces of utility, or you've sacrificed your gun so you can have full utility.
Yeah, and I think that's an extremely tough thing to do on the CT side. We saw Cloud9 on their pistols not even buying anything as well at previous events, which could be a strat. But they're a team we'll discuss later, because they're a team that are playing with 5 core riflers, which is extremely interesting to see. But one other player that I want to identify, and I know that you took a look at STYKO, is Yimfat. And I just want to get your thoughts on what makes this guy so good.
So he had obviously insane event at CAC, and I think what I saw is generally very good transitions of impact, especially for his young age. To add to the context, that he is very seamless and very good at switching up passive playstyle with an aggressive one. So let's say for his roles, if you look at his roles purely, you're gonna think of him as a passive player, right? Because he needs to establish map controls as a lurk, and then as an anchor, he's in this realm of support-ish kind of guys where he needs to survive, he needs to get a kill and survive, he needs to ask for rotation, etc. It's not a lot of playmaking abilities, honestly, that he's there. There's Xertion and Frozen and obviously Torzi that are probably going to do that more. And then Impact is stuck in this limbo. But what I saw watching his demos, I think I did a review of their 12-0 half against Astralis on Vertigo. They eventually won that map and game. It was in semifinals, and I noticed that the difference between him taking duels when he needs to and when he doesn't need to is very admirable. Like, I think he's really good at it. He knows when to go aggressive and go for a trait, versus when he needs to play passive and play more reserved kind of role where he is a little bit in back. Very, very good and disciplined for his age. I think he's 17 years old. And for CT side, he got a lot of kills. And the reason why we spoke about it is because, well, we said that anchors are maybe a little bit struggling because they are sitting somewhere holding an angle, and then people just strafe into them, Ferrari peak, and then you're dead. But Yimbad is playing it a little bit differently. So he doesn't play SMGs at all. He has like one SMG kill per 30 rounds or something. So he values always M4 and AUG over SMG and nades. So he really wants to get those duels in. And the way he plays these anchor positions is that he's just not static at all. He constantly moves, even if he's holding an angle, he goes into the cover and then peeks into an angle, let's say on timing every 1 or 2 seconds. This, yes, gives timing options for T's to sneak by or pass by to an unexpected position, but it allows him to be in an advantage duel every single time. And that's what I love. I see some players transition in a good way and a bad way. Impad is definitely doing it correctly. He is trying to abuse the fact that just peeking into an angle right now is pain to deal with, and he's using it not only on his T side but also on his CT side. And the fact that he's so extremely sharp just adds to the point where he is able to out aim pretty much anyone. I saw the demo against the Strauss. He was clearly the best player on the server.
And because I'll sorry, go ahead, Hooker.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, I don't know if I've seen an improvement from a player this quickly, because I remember at Cologne he was genuinely making big mistakes and losing his team rounds, and it makes sense because he was literally so new and so young, and I could understand why that would happen. But then he came straight into Pro League and was suddenly great. Now he's transitioned. He looks like he's even better as an anchor. It's actually ridiculous how quick he's improved, because he was one of the best players at the Asia Championships. I think no one would doubt that. It's insane, and I expect him to be sharp. I expect the aim. But I think the thing that impressed me most is when you watch him, it just feels like he was like letting the game come to him. It felt like he was like a veteran player in a weird way. Like he would, as STYKO said, he would like reposition quite a lot and like just catch people out or be in a position they didn't expect, and just all these little like moves where it felt like everything he was doing was right. And it really honestly shocked me so much how quickly he improved. So he deserves so much credit. Dude, if he can keep this up, man, Mouse can actually be such a threat. I'm really excited about this team.
Yeah, and just going back briefly to some of the content you did, STYKO, I saw your video really interested me about preparation and like anti-stratting. And when someone is like that on a site and they are constantly moving around, I can imagine that makes a player extremely difficult to read. And like if you were to like anti-strat him or try to figure out what position he's playing, are you just writing down like a million different positions on that sheet? Like how difficult is he to actually identify like where he plays from?
No, so first of all, every team and every single player, they have reads. There's just that. Like if you're good at spotting some patterns and pattern recognition, you will spot the reads. And if Yimpad is changing positions a lot and he's playing from different parts of the map quite often and he's repositioning throughout the round, I'm just going to write down that this is not a read. Like I cannot abuse him by, let's say, double nading that position because he plays it often at this timing. I will just say no read and I will move on, because then I will find the read, let's say, in his nade usage, the way the sequence of the nades he's using when he just pressuring the side versus when he's actually looking for kills. Maybe I will find the read there. Okay, so obviously we're picking up the good parts of him where he doesn't give you a clear read by being, constantly on his toes and just moving around and trying to catch people off guard. That's all right for him, great for him. But I'm pretty sure there's other stuff that we are missing right now, and it's really hard to tell just by watching the game on Twitch and VOD whether you would have like a analytical tool that you would take a look on and it to do a lot of things automatically for you.
Do you think that him, as you say, teams, you probably wouldn't double nade stack a position or something like that? Do you think that's why he might favor going for rifle over picking up certain bits of utility as well, like taking those duels?
Maybe, yeah. And also the fact that, um, first of all, he's confident. Like he got into the tournament where he has good stats and good tournament overall. Even Thunderpick was pretty all right, and he's always going to buy that AK if he doesn't have money, Galil. And if he needs a help with utility, he's going to ask Syuhi to drop him some. I've seen it multiple times in this vertical game that I analyzed. Syuhi was there to help him take certain control where it's risky, and then once it's not risky anymore, Impact is going for duels against Boss, which he felt comfortable against because he was out aiming him throughout the whole series. So, yes, I think he has enough freedom right now in the team because they know in Mousesports that Frozen and Impact are the best performing players on the team. That's why I want you guys to have AK every single round if possible. If you need anything else, we will fix and play around it. We will give you, we will drop you, we'll nade for you, we'll flash for you. That's what we are going to do. You guys are there to perform right now because that's how we're getting deep into the tournaments and sometimes even winning the tournament. Well, obviously they didn't win, but it was very close against FaZe. So they had a really solid chance, and Impact was the only guy with positive stats right that game. As I said, I don't want to look too much into that, but he was clearly doing something right. And I think that's the just whole structure behind Mousesports right now. Impact, just go and kill in a way.
Yeah, just direct him to go kill and he'll do the job for you. Another team that I briefly want to talk about before we move on to Blast and talk about other things, who gave FaZe a tough time in their opening match, which is NIP. They went in without their IGL they've signed, which is Alex. And did anyone catch that game? Because as I was saying, I didn't catch too much of the event just based on my work schedule. I woke up earlier for that game thinking, okay, it'll only be 20 minutes. It lasted 2.5 hours. So it was a very, very long game. But I just want to get your takes as well on Rez, because he is a player, I believe he finished second in terms of stats at the event, and his transition over to CS2 because he is looking on fire at the minute.
Yeah, he played really well here. I think I didn't really get to catch, like, I woke up and I saw that FaZe result and I was like, where do I start with watching this game back? Would I start in overtime? I don't even know once you get into a game like that. Yeah, I guess Rez, he may have farmed like some numbers against Wings Up, but he still did really well against Ents as well. So definitely like some promising things from NIP at least, which is nice. Maxter was actually like pretty good as well, considering he was just coming in and showing what he could do. So yeah, there were some things to like. I think this was kind of a tough tournament because it's an 8-team event and you have teams like Ents, Malz, Astralis. Like, I wouldn't expect NIP to be above any of those guys, and that's before you get to FaZe, obviously. So it's kind of like what I expected from NIP results-wise, but probably like steps towards positives, just because at least we saw something out of a few of the players. Even Config was having some good maps. So I think it's a nice sign, at least for NIP. They got something going, but yeah, this is sadly kind of the result you expect right now with where NIP are.
Are there any other teams or players at the event that surprised you guys?
I mean, it's just the Asian teams, isn't it? And
yeah,
they didn't really do too much.
I was surprised at Tyloo because I feel like when they were playing against I think it was Lin Vision for that elimination game, they had so many chances to close out every single one of those maps, and they managed to do it on one. But they'd have a lead and they'd either lose it to a pistol round and then like their mental would go, or it would be like there were like these 1v1s that were so close and they just weren't like kind of winning like the metaphorical like coin flip when it comes to the amount of 1v1s that they had, and it was always going Lin Vision's way, and it was rough because it felt like Tyloo for the majority of that game was actually in control, and then it was just like the more minute things that and the fine margins where it really came down to it that Lin Vision would get in the edge. I think that game I was watching it because I managed to watch the first day of the group, so I stayed up, I was loving life, and then I completely ruined my sleep schedule and just fell asleep throughout the whole of them. But that game was actually a really good watch. I've been really enjoying watching kind of the Asia Pacific teams in Challenger League and how they're adjusting. Blair said something really interesting, which kind of really resonated with that whole series, and he basically just said Tai Lu in the late round and the way they close the games out, they really struggle with having like a clear game plan. And it was so evident in that Lim Vision best of 3. Like, it was so wild.
That's just like classic Tai Lu to me, though. Sadly, like I feel like every time I watch these guys, they just I'm sure this isn't it, but you watch it and it almost feels like they're not disciplined in a weird way. It kind of feels like they're just like messing about and they're like, oh, okay, well, sometimes they'll be up in like a 4v2 and they'll be like, well, I guess we've probably won this round. And it's like, no, stop fighting. You just stop fighting, you win, guys, please. But listen, maybe one day the madness will end in Asian CS.
Wasn't the final round of Nuke exactly that? Like they had like a 4v2
Yes.
advantage, and they
Yes,
just
it
was.
Because I was watching that game, I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, they're gonna make playoffs, they're gonna save my fantasy team, and then it just
Yeah.
all went to
No,
shit.
exactly. Like, I had Jamyang and I had Kaze, because I was like, I was just like, I've got belief in them. Jamyang was playing unreal. Kaze had some really good moments, and then they just kind of just threw the rounds away, and I was like, well, great. Like,
Yeah.
top 98%. Here we go.
The sad thing actually is like the one team, the Mongols, actually look like, because they weren't here, but they look like the one team that actually plays some like pretty good Counter-Strike. But I don't know
they've
if
got
they
a lot
have
of
the
variation.
same. Yeah, they don't have the same quality of players as like a Tai Lu. Like because obviously I'm just, like language-wise, that's never going to work. But if you could play the Mongols play style with some of these Tai Lu players, you'd actually have a really good team.
The one thing I want to throw to you, STYKO, because we spoke about it on the last one, but Kaze went in to the event in an interview saying that Lin Vision were the number one team in China, coming from the opposing team. Is that something that you would ever do in your situation? Like, is that just as a loser's mindset going into that matchup?
I don't know, really. If you want to force yourself into underdog position, I guess that kind of is a strat here. But again, like, I don't really know the cultural differences, and I believe like in Asia and especially like Chinese teams, they're very respectful towards the enemy and opponent. Maybe this was a little bit too respectful, I would say, but maybe he was just being nice. He was being honest, and they smashed them in scrims. Let's say there's so much going on, but I wouldn't maybe say it before the game. Just
Yeah, they did.
just because I think it can backfire very easily.
Lin Vision did take the win over them at the IEM China qualifier.
Yeah.
So that might have been what it was based on. But I mean, for like when you were competing around the time of the Blast Major, I always pitted you and Apex and Gamer Legion as quite close together, like in terms of just the level of the teams. Like, would you ever go into a match at that point against Gamer Legion and think, oh yeah, they're the better team, or maybe you have a better team that you think you were kind of level with?
It might be, again, like, it might be that, let's say, you sense a fear in your teammates before the game, like they are, let's say, a little bit shaky and they're losing confidence, and then you say that Gamer Legion is here to win, like to get into deep tournament, into the playoff run, and they beat us recently twice already. We had bad results against them on scrims. Like, it might be a way for your players to relieve kind of pressure and show them that if we lose, like, it's all right, because we're not here expected to win this game. So it might be a psychological, like, a way for not only to intimidate the opponent or make them play less focused, but also to kind of help your teammates to get them into different mind space, because they are clearly not playing well or doing well or like thinking well before the game. So sometimes it's personal grudges against certain opponents. Let's say you have this is an example, but let's say Nog would be feeling anxious because there's Isaac on the team, which is his good friend, and he wants to beat him, but, well, he's putting too much pressure on himself, and we're fearing that usually that resulted in him not having a good game, right? But obviously that didn't happen. I'm just putting it as an example against some other opponents. Maybe it was a case in this Tyloo versus Linvision match.
And during the event, the Shanghai Major has been announced as well. I saw you putting some tweets out about visas, and I just wanted to get your take on that major, like how you think it will go. If do you think players are going to be able to get in?
I think it's announced well in advance, but at the same time, well, I was thinking of it as another event, just another event, and I think every Asian event I'm sorry, every event in China is having these visa issues, and it's just rough. But then I realized that it's a major, and Valve will probably fix a lot of stuff themselves, and that's the reason why they announced it so early, that they can get to work on paperwork prior to that, and they will maybe get a deal with the like, I don't know, embassies, government. I don't know what goes on really, but they might get an advanced like permissions for certain players to come in, play there, and they should be ready. Let's say they alert them in advance, like, hey guys, during this time you're gonna have a lot of different visa applications coming from all around the world. This is the reason, and if they refer to it, we want you to take a look at it properly because we are hosting a huge event. So they might be doing it this way, because I think Riot was doing it when there were, or even Valve when there was Dota 2 major, or the international. They were fixing a lot of visa like that. So,
And Brandon, I just want to get your take on the time zone differences, because we had the major in Rio last year, and being from this part of the world, it makes it very difficult to stay up to date with it. So I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I don't think, obviously you're gonna lose viewership if you're playing the games at like 6 a.m. or like 7 a.m. Like European time. But with that being said, I feel like a lot of people complain about it, but you actually look at the numbers for events that kind of take shape and take place, you still get very good viewership for the events. I feel like the only counter you could do is you could say to the players, well, we're going to play at all these times so it's favorable for the broadcast. But then at the end of the day, I don't think that's fair. It should be the competition, and where you are placed should take priority and precedent above everything else. Like, the competition should be the highest point, and then everything else should be below it, in my opinion. So if you have to make a sacrifice watching the games at an earlier time, but it means the players are going to be in the best possible conditions for them to perform the best, and we're going to get the best version of Counter-Strike, I think that should take priority. But I do agree that it kind of does suck to a certain extent, because it's like, I'm not going to be able to sit here all day unless I reverse my sleep schedule. And for the casual viewer as well, it's like where they've got their job, where they've kind of want to tune into games, maybe like after work, after school. You can't really do that unless you're waking up early and going to bed at like 9 p.m. or something. So I think it is difficult to strike that balance.
If they do it like the Asia Championships, like the final for the Asia Championships, I think was on like 1 p.m. my time. I think it was like midday, 1 p.m.
It
like,
was good for Europe.
Yeah, pretty doable, I think. I know, actually, I don't know if you guys follow F1, but the Las Vegas Grand Prix, I looked it up because I was like, am I going to be able to watch this? They're doing that at like 10 p.m. local time, which makes it like 6 a.m. here or something. And I'm like, I'm still probably not going to watch that. And the drivers are going to have to drive at 10 p.m. local time, which feels weird. But I think they're trying to do it at night to make it look all cool or whatever, because it's down the Vegas Strip, all of that spectacle. Should be interesting to watch. But no, yeah, hopefully, I hope that they can just get the time zones that, if it's like a Sunday and it's the final and it's on at midday or something, yeah, people will watch
fine.
that 100%.
Yeah,
I
guess
if
it's
that's
like
the case,
the
then
opening
I'm not
games,
worried.
right? I guess it's like where they start at like 4 a.m. sort of thing. It's like, I don't know how it would work. Like, could you realistically push the schedule back like maybe like 2 hours? So like the game start at like 6 a.m. and then I guess you'll get in the final then at like 2 p.m., 2:30. It's kind of like a gray area, right? Because you don't know how it works logistically.
Yeah, I think local time, it would just like not be good enough. And I think like you said, there's certain times it gets to where you can't really force players to start their game at like midnight local time or whatever it might be.
I think as well we'll have the data by then to see how long games are, so they could possibly make adjustments to, if they start the schedule a bit later, because you can fit more games in a day now. But yeah, it really depends. I think there's a lot to look forward to for it. It's definitely an event I think people will be interested to go to. If it's like your first time visiting Asia or China, it'd be an interesting event to attend for sure. But I want to talk finally. We've made it all the way to the final topic of Blast. It's finally an event that will be in European time zone. Lucky for us, so we can actually get to watch it. And well, the first game is a rematch of the FaZe NIP. It's a best of 3. Do you think that this best of 3 will be shorter than that best of 1? Because I hope so. Schedule.
Yeah, you would assume so, right? Like FaZe are on. It's like a 15-match win streak, I think it is.
Something like that, yeah.
It's pretty wild, and it's like
the only game they've lost in CS2 was that, I think it was the opening BO1, yeah, against Gamer Legion on like neutral, like double OT, yeah.
Orca's struggling to remember. He was there.
I was there. Yeah. They definitely deserve to lose that.
The only game they lose.
They like won both pistols and still lost, so that's on them.
Or still jet lagged.
Exactly.
But we've spoken a lot about FaZe. I don't think there's too much more that needs to be said about them. They are the undisputed number 1 at the minute. But I want to get you guys' takes on Alex and how much structure do you think that he can bring to NIP, or do you think this might not be the correct move for them? Yeah, we'll start with Brandon.
I like Alex. I think he actually does. I think he offers a lot more than people kind of really do give him credit for. I think the interesting adjustment for him will obviously be, I think it might be his first international roster, so he has to kind of have that cultural shift as well. Also, NIP are kind of, their roster has been in turmoil for a while, and you're now just starting to find like a pure identity for this team where roles aren't completely overlapping. Everyone kind of has their defined responsibilities. And I feel like it would take time. There might be a honeymoon period, but I feel like you've got to, again, give this team like a few events to kind of really mold and gel. You don't know what it looks like behind the scenes in terms of, are they boot camping? Have they actually met up with Alex? Like, because, but like, this is a question to you, STYKO, when I stop my rambling, but it's like, we'll meeting a new player, just kind of having him in person. I mean, that's obviously got to strengthen relationships, right? So I feel like if they are boot camping and they are preparing for the full final, and they've already got Alex there. I knew he did an interview like in the studio for NIP, so maybe he is there just hanging out. So I don't know. I feel like they could do something here, but you take a look at the caliber of teams that are attending the event, and you kind of don't throw NIP in the equation of teams that you expect to go on this deep run, but then they are underdogs. They have literally no pressure because they've completely moved all of their roster around. So I expect them to do okay, considering that they went that distance with FaZe in the CAC, but I don't expect them to be mind-blowingly deep running at this event.
STYKO, I think I cut you off at the start.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, look, when I look individually at NIP right now, I really like the players. Like, I'm on good terms with every single one of them, pretty much, which I know, but I can't just I can't really pinpoint it, but I just don't feel like it's working overall in NIP. Like, it's not really a lineup problem anymore. I feel like there is something going on that is deep inside, whether it's an org or a staff or management or everything combined. Because I feel like whoever comes into the lineup is just not feeling it. Besides maybe Hetrick, he had like some really good performances, and lately, yes, the rest had a good transition. When Hampus went away from the lineup, he kind of threw a shade on the whole team and organization, saying that there are personal grudges being held against each other. There is just not too many good vibes going on. Then Hampus get booted. You see you see config like posting really nice stories every day from the bootcamp, like a really good day at the bootcamp. We are having really good fun and stuff like that. So he's clearly loving the change, which at the same time I like, because he might enable that old config that is just pure monster on the server. But if the reason why Hampus was benched / kicked is that people were not listening to him and he was not demanding enough, or he was not leading role enough, I don't know if Alex will be able to fulfill that, right? He might in the beginning. Honeymoon period is always nice. Everyone puts on their best behavior because the lineup is new, we want to achieve. But as soon as the struggle will arrive again and again, it does occur. Well, it might fall into a trap where it's just loop, right? It's just same stuff all the time. So I really hope they do something well, but I'm gonna cheer for FaZe. Maybe I have just personal stuff against NIP as an organization for what they did to Donk. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you, there was Alexi V did a podcast recently. It was in Finnish,
right.
but it got translated. And some of the, I'm looking at it now, some of the quotes from that about NIP, in my head, the way I read these, this is about as close to him saying he didn't like the org without actually saying it, if you know what I mean. So one of the quotes is, Brolan and Config's roles overlapped and we knew about it, but still made the change. And well, now they replaced Brolan because of it. So it basically sounds like he knew that Brolan and Config wouldn't work, but he got forced into it. Then he goes, so yeah, there was a lot of changes. I think we were never as good as we could have been. And then at the end, he just goes, I don't want to tell everything, but the style of how I was informed that I was leaving NIP, that's when I lost a little bit of interest. In a way, I was pleased because we just didn't do that well. So it kind of sounds like he wasn't happy with the org or like the decisions made. It's going to make it tough for Alex, I think. Like, that's not, hopefully they do just fully back him, because I think you're right. Like, this team looks like it could be good. And I like the Alex pickup. I actually think Movistar Riders, they're a weird team because they would often struggle a bit online, but then they would normally come to LANs and do very well. And they didn't really have like crazy good players. I also even think having someone like Mopoz on his team previously, that's a player who needs a lot of his own space. And so it seems to me like Alex, he can give a bit of structure, but he also knows when to give his players space, because Mopoz was just this mad aggressive rifler, just making plays all the time. So I don't mind the idea in theory. I think this is maybe about as good as NIP could have gone for in terms of trying a new IGL. But I think STYKO's right. It almost feels like being the IGL of NIP is a poison chalice right now. Like in football, if you become the manager of Manchester United, you get all this pressure on you, this expectation, and it's really hard to succeed. And it seems like for whatever reason, NIP is like that right now. You kind of get some expectations, but you maybe don't get the backing that you need.
It's also, I mean, linking it to traditional sports in the way of like an injury, the way that they are constantly switching out players almost every 6 months. It's like, are these players that are sticking with the roster, like Rez and for Brolin for some time, you've almost got to feel like you're wasting part of your career, never getting to play at full strength because you're getting that changes constantly. And I couldn't imagine how that would feel, if you've spent, I mean, Rez has been there since back when Forrest and Get Right were on the lineup. So you spent that long on there with IM Oakland as your one title. Surely you get to the end of that and you think, looking back, I have not made the correct decisions to stick it out with this lineup. So yeah, I couldn't imagine. Well, yeah, going into that.
You can look at it from the other perspective. He's part of the lineup for so long, and the problems within the lineup are for that period as well. Is he part of the problem? But it's something that we can only theorize around, because it's really hard to say. But I know from like secret kind of source that, for example, on Overpass for NIP, right, on the CT side, when it comes to roles, Hoka mentioned the role clash. Well, every single player on that roster wanted to play a rifler as a seat. Like Hetrick is an oper, okay, he goes away from the equation, but every single of 4 others, they wanted to be in the star position on Overpass, a rifler, and they just can't. Like in the end, I think Rez got it, and therefore maybe they made like, Okay, he's going to take a hit on different maps in the roles because he, for overpass, got his favorite role. But every single one wanted to be this star kind of player where they wanted to play in this position. And maybe it kind of goes in the way of saying that there's too many selfish players on the roster for it to make it work. Now with the approach of Alex, it might be a little different, but I hope it will be, because I truly wish the players on NIP like more success than they're having, because it's kind of mind-boggling how hard it is for them to perform.
Yeah,
And,
to be
for
to be
no good
fair,
reason.
we were saying earlier when they brought Esatag back in, we were kind of saying, okay, finally he's a player who's happy to play like some of the you know the tougher roles. And then I imagine Alex will probably be similar. I don't really think of him as an IGL that's going to take star roles. So if that's going to be the case, if Esatag and Alex are now the more supportive riflers, okay, it's all on config and res. Like, you guys have to be star riflers at this point. So hopefully that structure actually allows that to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we can look all the way back to previous episodes we've done where we've talked about should these changes have been made. Like, I think we can go back to before, it must have been a year ago now when the
I was
config
gonna
change
say, yeah, like
happened.
easily more than
I
probably.
think it was when we were doing when it was just Brandon and I doing these fantasy previews, and this was when config had come in, and I was very adamant, and I was like, there is no way you replace S-Tag in this, because you're just creating role clashes. I mean, even someone watches it, that watches Counter-Strike, you know, because they love watching Counter-Strike, surely you could see that just by knowing roles of players. And yeah, it's, as you said, Hawker, poison chalice for IGLs. I do worry for. I think that's the perfect example for them. But the other matchup in Group A, which I also think is probably the harder group, which is FaZe, NIP, Cloud9, Na'Vi, and then Group B is Vitality, Heroic, Complexity, Astralis. I do think NIP have almost drawn the short straw there. But I want to talk about Cloud9 and how they're playing currently without a dedicated AWPer, and whether you think that could be something that becomes a bit meta in CS2.
I like
Yeah.
it. I do
Yeah.
like it. It's something that there's, again, people try to put it in theory like it could work, and now Cloud9 will actually do it. Whether it's by accident. Let's say they secured Boomich prior to Shiro deciding to leave. It might have happened, and now they're stuck in a limbo where they don't have an AWPer, but they're gonna just flow with it. Like, this is what we wanted. We're gonna do an event with it, and maybe they're gonna outperform everyone else thanks to this. It's a little gimmick that might have come, as I said, by accident. But looking forward, me as a guy who is going to watch these demos maybe a little bit more analytically, to see whether it's actually net positive or net negative for a team to be this kind of way, and also how teams will approach this playing against them, knowing that they're not going to ever purchase an AWP. Are there different duels that they're going to be comfortable taking? Maybe is there going to be less nades being used to neutralize the AWP that you usually would be doing, and you feel against, let's say on CD side, you know there's not an AWP, you're just going to walk in and take a duel with an AK against M4 because you know you have an advantage. Whereas this might change the dynamic in how teams play specifically against Cloud9.
And Brandon, I know we spoke about it briefly on the last episode, but some of the events that you've casted where they've been, the dynamic for them on the CT side, is there a change of AWP there for the anchor positions on different maps for different players?
Yeah, so it's cool watching them because obviously they are theory crafting, I think, on the go. But for Thunderpick especially, I think Ancient Overpass are really good examples. Ancient, Perfecto, Orpin, because he's holding A. He's kind of swapped role a little bit now with Hobbit because Perfecto was playing B quite a lot. And then Boomich has now come in. Boomich is taking Cave, it looks like Boomich has taken basically all of his roles that he was playing on one win, which means that Hobbit and Perfecto have had to shuffle. Perfecto, pretty sure he's second AWPed on Na'Vi anyway. So he's now anchoring a bomb site, picks up the AWP when he can, just holds the angle. Overpass, Boomich is AWPing. He's an A player. He's picking it up, and he was actually quite wild with it. So I don't know. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of change in the camp with Cloud9 and how they approach things. Hobbit wouldn't tell us too much. Obviously, when we interviewed him for Fun to Pick, he just said we're trying to cook something. I was like, all right, great, cheers. Like, that's very helpful. But it does look like they're playing a lot more flexible, and I feel like that does play into the playstyle a lot more in CS2. Kind of where you've got the peaks advantage, whether it is getting less with every update, but you can just take full advantage of it right now. The fact that you don't have one dedicated AWPer, it means you don't rely on someone having to have this sniper. If we pick it up, it's because we're feeling it in the moment. We've got AKs constantly. We've always got that option to be a little bit more aggressive in the mid round, in the early round. I think it's actually very interesting. I do quite like it.
I mean, there's positions like you say, if you're playing Ancient, if you're in Brokey, you're not in there as, unless a team is smoking you off, but it's almost like a guaranteed pick if you're holding it correctly and the team do come to you. So yeah, there's definitely positions where you do want to have it. I saw you smiling, STYKO, when Brandon was saying about different players picking up the AWP. It's one thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a surprise for that. You never know what you get.
Yeah,
people will suddenly whip up an AWP on positions where you just don't expect it. You are always going to be scared of double AWP setups, and maybe it can get a little bit out of meta, but also it might just break the team completely because couple of missed gambles, couple of missed shots will eventually downfall your economy in the team. Incredibly hard to come back in CS2 like that with the loss bonus and MR12. Let's see how it goes. Like all I have to say is that I'm excited to see it. If it's gonna fail terribly, we will enjoy it, and if it's gonna go masterfully, we will enjoy it as well.
It's definitely one of those
things. They play double
AWP
as well.
They
did play double AWP. Yeah, it was Boomich Perfecto, and then I think one round, I think Hobbit was using it, and then he realized quickly that he would never want to pick up the AWP again and threw it away instantly.
I mean, like, there's a real difference, isn't there, between holding an angle with an AWP and then also realizing that you've now got to retake the other site with that AWP. I imagine most players who aren't, the dedicated AWPers do not want to touch it at all. But the one interesting thing about this matchup is that you've got the number 1 and number 3 player of last year not here in these two teams. The two prominent AWPers. Wonderful comes in to take the place of Simple. But there's one player on Na'Vi that I'd like to discuss based on your previous experience with him, STYKO, which is JL. When you were talking earlier about the team, getting to a point where you felt like that was kind of cause your downfall was almost peaking too early, or however you want to phrase it. I can't imagine him not smiling. Like, that's just the way that I see JL. So I just want to talk about maybe his psychological impact on this Na'Vi team and how you think that his attitude may have helped them.
Sure. So first of all, JL in our team, obviously he was a big part of the vibes and success that we had. But there were also periods where we were, I wouldn't say we were struggling because of him, but we were all part of the same problem, which was the mood and the approach. I can clearly see that coming into Na'Vi, he understood upfront that he needs to be the guy that will going to cheer no matter what, and he's going to smile no matter what, and he's going to be just a nice overall vibe guy, because you have a Simple in there. He likes to a little bit get heated. You have Alexi B there, who's not going to show too many emotions. You have Bit there, who's just machine, no emotions as well. I'm not sure how he is. But yeah, so JL is going to be there for as a secondary purpose, is going to keep the mood up. So that's why you see him like this a lot of the time. But I can imagine sometimes it can get tiring, and maybe you have a terrible performance and you are just not feeling like you are going to cheer your teammates up because you're struggling. It's like all the factors, but I feel like he definitely has like this on camera persona, I would say, that he is very positive and everything, and sure he is, but sometimes it was getting heated as well in Apex camp on few occasions, and I'm pretty sure it might happen in Navi as well. It's just happening behind closed doors, and we will never know about it. So that's how professional organizations deal with it, and they should be dealing with it. All I'm going to say is that some players are not, this is not about jail, but some players that you are seeing on camera when they're playing or when they're streaming or when they're having interviews, just like this one, they are a very different person compared to what they are on day-to-day basis with a team. And you have to kind of filter things through.
So what you're saying is that you're really mean outside of all of this.
Well, I'm trying to be transparent.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
I know what you're saying. Like even myself, like I'm not this extroverted, I would say. Like I'm very introverted kind of guy, but whenever you see me doing content, like I love talking about it, and then that kind of transforms me into extrovert, wanting to share stuff, wanting to explain, go into like in depth, but at the same time be casual enough for people to understand it. So but in the real life, like you would see the differences. Like that's just how it is. And your real life persona is going to interact with the practice, because you're going to have that persona for 6 to 10 hours per day with your team. Whenever you're traveling, you're going to be yourself. You can't fake it for forever, right? So you have kind of different guy that is.
I understand completely what you're saying as well, because I mean, where you've just said you're introverted there, that does surprise me based on how good your camera presence is and a lot of your content. Like you don't come across like that. So you're definitely correct in that way. And it's also interesting what you're saying there about how you almost become extroverted because of what you're talking about.
It's the topic that interests me, and what makes me genuinely happy is going to make me different person. It's forming me as a different person. And I'm still in the process of learning about myself. Okay, I thought I was introverted. Like throughout the high school, I was extremely silent guy. I was just, putting my head down, not being like eccentric or whatever. And then I realized that in game, it doesn't really work that way, because if you're going to be the silent guy, people will just step over you and you will not push your voice into the team. People will think like you're invaluable to the team because you have no opinion. I can't be like this anymore. And I had to reinvent myself. And again, this is something we trial back to the Apex Misuta Kyojin thing. They were from FaZe very introverted, not talking too much. And then suddenly in the team where they must have an opinion about things, how to play the game, they were unable to voice it.
I think you're definitely correct. Like anyone that has a passion or interest, as soon as you start talking to them about that, they could be the most introverted person ever, the most shy person. As soon as you start talking about their interest, yeah, you can't stop them talking most of the time. Yeah. So yeah, one more player just on this matchup I'd like to talk about is Wonderful. And I mean, you can't really replace Simple in terms of skill. That's a tough ask of anybody. But Hawker, I'd like to get your take on Wonderful and how well you think he can use this opportunity.
Yeah, just like felt like the most obvious pickup, really. I'm not going to lie. He's just been farming numbers online for quite a few months on Sprout. Obviously already been talking internationally as well, which I'm sure helps. Whenever I was seeing him in the past, I felt like he was very much a player who like was more on the holding angles side, and I think he has evolved that recently. I felt like when he was on Spirit, he would oftentimes just be one position. I'm going to lock down this position. I'll get good numbers while doing so, but felt like that was kind of all he had to his game. And I do think on Sprout that's changed a bit, maybe just because he's probably the main man on that Sprout lineup. So that's a good sign. I think it was an obvious pickup. It is just kind of interesting having the team that's purposely gone without picking up an AWPer against the team that has most recently just picked up Wonderful. That could be a fun matchup, like going down the line to see, could that experiment of no work, or did Na'Vi make the right choice in getting Wonderful into the lineup? I guess we'll wait and see, because like you said, this matchup just full of unknowns, really. I think if I was gonna predict it, I would maybe lean Navi, but even that, I'm really, as soon as I say it, I'm not confident about it.
And moving on to the second group, got Vitality, Heroic. Vitality just made the change with Magis to Mezzi, also got a new coach. But Heroic, they are in a complete state at the minute. Do you expect much from them in this event, considering, as I said earlier, I don't know if you guys agree with that Group B is the easier group, but do you expect anything out of them? It's Cadian's last dance on Heroic. Do you think they'll be able to take a win?
I wonder if it is actually his last dance, or it might be a case of come back into the team for one event now that these players who were originally wanting your head have gone. See how you vibe back again. Now you've got Dupree as well. And maybe if you have a good event with these guys and the vibes are good, maybe we talk about getting you back. I don't know. I think it's. I feel like you don't expect anything from Heroic, and the thing is, they're notoriously a very good team that can kind of get through the pressure of group stages without having to really think about it too hard. And then when it comes to the high pressure situations where it comes to the expectations of them never really closing out the grand final or the semi final, suddenly that's completely removed because you're not going to have the expectations of you even being there because it's suddenly we're playing with two standards. So I wonder how much that actually will help them. And suddenly Heroic playing without pressure is probably a very scary Heroic. And sure, some of the pieces have changed, but you've got a lot of experience with Dupree. You've got Zyphon coming in that I think with structure and being managed and micromanaged a little bit will probably be a very decent player as well. I feel like we've not really seen the expectations and the ceiling that Zyphon can provide. Just based on where he was in Flames. He was playing really well in Flames. He then moved to Sprout, and it hasn't really been the same Zyphon that I was really anticipating. So I hope he can kind of show why he deserves to be in Tier 1, and I hope that can be a very good little spotlight for him to perform in. I don't know. With Heroic, obviously, we're not going to know, but I feel like they'll actually do a lot better than most people think they're going to.
The one thing as well that we spoke about with the Mezzi edition is that a lot of these teams that are already playing in this event have already qualified to the World Finals at the end of the year. So I'd like to get your take on this, STYKO, because the way we discussed it last time was that Mezzi comes into this event in my opinion, almost like the best way possible, where you get to compete against some of the best teams in the world. You've already qualified for the event that this award wins you. And yeah, you basically just get the best practice, almost like the first experience into the lineup. But I'd like to get your take on
that. Yeah, I think it makes sense that people are changing in this kind of moments of the season. For this very reason, you can see both Cloud9 roster change, Navi roster change, NIP roster change. So there's only one team in Group A that is kind of stable, and even that is big question mark. With Twist, he could have left or he might be leaving very soon. And then in Group B, again, Vitality, Heroic are doing roster changes. Astralis are about to do it with Stown and Yabi. And then Complexity is, again, only team that is so out of all these teams, only two teams are kind of stable. And it makes sense. This is the time where probably the second major of the year would be ending. So people would have, they have this buffer period before the last events of the season, which are anyway very much closed circuit. So they kind of don't need to perform as they would at the start of the season, let's say during EPL or let's say Cologne. And it kind of goes hand in hand that organizations knows about these kind of deaf period throughout the season where it's good to do changes, and they are actively seeking for, let's say, replacements or negotiating contracts or just booting players if they don't fit the roster. Like it might be happening, and this is why I feel this event is going to be a little bit scuffed because of it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think of all the teams in this, there's only four teams have the chance to gain qualification by winning this event. So that matchup, Astralis Complexity, is going to be key for both teams to not go to the lower bracket immediately, because they are two of the four teams that have the chance to qualify to the World Finals by winning this event. And Astralis is another team that rumored to be going under roster changes, so there's a whole other bit of pressure on them there, especially for the free players who potentially are losing their spots. But I'd also like to get your thoughts on Elige, because he's one of those players as well that has transitioned extremely well from CSGO into CS2 and was a standout across Sydney. So, yeah, Hawker, you were there. What did you think of Elige whilst he was transitioning over to CS2?
Yeah, he was great. I think it took a while for Elige to actually hit the level we were hoping he would on Complexity, because I think everyone was assuming, okay, this is a big name player coming to Complexity. He is the man. He's going to come in here, swinging his dick around, doing whatever he wants. And I think it took a minute, but we're there now. His spray transfers were really special at that event. He was basically the only player I saw who could actually land a spray transfer, because it just seems harder to spray now. So I think he's definitely very exciting. I also want to say, I understand why everyone's saying Rops is the best in the world right now. But it's so hard for me to say that when Elige, okay, listen, he looked very good at Sydney. Maybe you need to see more from him, but he hasn't got a chance to show more. I genuinely think in the maps I saw of Modesty at Sydney, he looked like he could easily end up being the best player in the world in CS2. I think we saw like 6 maps from him. We've basically not seen ZywOo play or Spinks play in CS2. Like, I understand we can only go off of what we've seen, but it does feel a little harsh to me to be like, okay, Rops is the best in the world, even though ZywOo's played like 4 maps. It's like, maybe we do need to wait and see some of these guys. And even like Spinks, I think Spinks is constantly underrated. I think he's a very, very good rifler. So I'm excited to see what he can do. But yeah, Complexity, I really liked what they were doing at Sydney. They were probably the most inventive team at that event. They were the best at phasing the smokes and using that new mechanic. So I'm really hoping they come into this with more of the same, because I remember going into Sydney, JT actually said they barely had any prac time and that they didn't think they'd come up with much that was that innovative. And they probably still look like the most innovative team there. So I'm hoping we get to see even more just cool innovations from them, because like you said, they're one of the teams that actually has their 5-man lineup and probably has been able to properly work and bring in hopefully new stuff.
Do you need to go grab a parcel, STYKO?
Yeah, I need to
go
be right back. Okay.
We'll just quickly talk, because I know Brandon had a point, so we can.
Sure. So, like, did you guys see the thing on Twitter, the Complexity released voice comms from IEM Sydney? And if you haven't seen them, go watch them, because they are so funny. Like, the vibes in that team is just absolutely incredible. Like, I can imagine, like, obviously coming from Liquid, being on Liquid for so long, like Elige would have had like a lot of pressure, and like obviously the vibes would have been like varying in that team so much. But my goodness me, like those Complexity comms were something else. Like they were amazing.
They kind of deserve more fans than they've got, low key, because like Floppy is hilarious.
Floppy.
You just don't see it enough. And then Hulzerk, we've seen him. He's happy to meme. Like he's happy to pretend to be the American. You know, I always knew Hulzerk would fit in, because I remember casting him online at one point, and he was drinking Coke from a 2-liter bottle straight from the bottle. And I was like, this guy's basically already American, man. This is gonna work perfectly.
Yeah, I remember watching that video you mentioned around it. It doesn't start with like Floppy. If someone says something to him, he's like, "I will give you a kiss. I'm gonna kiss you."
Yeah, so Hulzerk, come here, give me a kiss. Like...
Yeah. Playing in that team must be good fun. I mean, you can imagine Elige is quite enjoying that new stage where you can kind of relax and not be in a bit of a mess of a roster as well. Whatever happens with Liquid at the minute. But this is Blast. for the most part. These are the opening games at least. So what I'd like to do, as I said, there's only 4 teams really that have a chance to qualify by winning the event. I think if any of the other teams, I don't know who it goes to as the next participant who will win based on
It'll
points.
be on like points, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure who qualifies. I think NIP need to win to qualify. I don't think they have any chance on points. It might be Mao's. Oh no, Mao's have already qualified, haven't they? So, but anyway, I want to get your guys' takes on who do you think is going to take this event. I imagine we might see a FaZe sweep across the board, but STYKO, we'll start with you. Which of these 8 teams do you think has the best chance of winning?
Well, I'm gonna go with the boring answer, and I said that FaZe has they're just superior right now to win the event, but they obviously already have a spot. So I'm not sure if you want me to say someone who deserves the last spot out of those 4 teams.
Oh yeah, go for that as well.
I would love to. I'm actually opening World Premiere Final, and I don't see complexity there, and I think they made really big advance coming from CSGO into CS2. I think they might be on the list for me to actually take the last spot if they can somehow through the points. I'm not really aware of that, if they even can, but I would love to see them in the finals, because I feel like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams, 7 teams. Navi and Heroic are the only teams that are not like top 8, 1 to 5. Right, so there's just a couple of teams missing, and I think complexity fits really nicely in with rank 6. Yeah, they're right now rank 6 in the world, so I would definitely go from complexity, even from this point of view.
I think just looking at the leaderboard, the if you want to put into like a perspective of if we can't win it, we need to do really well. It's Astralis and then Cloud9. Astralis are about 300 points ahead. I'm not exactly sure how the points are awarded, so I couldn't tell you what place they need to be. But I can imagine that they're in opposite groups, so they're going to be looking to try and outdo one another. If FaZe do end up going on to win it, they want to be the finalist. So Hawker, who do you think is your team? Is it going to be FaZe again?
It's not impossible that Complexity win. I really don't think so. Like at Sydney, they looked very good. I know they came back and then played online and didn't do as well, and they went out pretty quickly. I think that was at Thunderpick, wasn't it? But like a bit of a hangover from the Sydney stuff. I'll let them off. I think the thing that was most impressive about that performance was the final map. Complexity were getting absolutely destroyed, and they still were actually able to bring it back and take it to overtime. So even though they lost in the overtime, I think it shows some of that mental strength that maybe you're not always sure about when you get a team that doesn't have the full experience across the board like them. And yeah, like Elige was just incredible in that final. Like he was genuinely just that good that I could see him really helping carry this team. And even like we said with Floppy, I think Floppy was saying stuff at the start where he was like, I hate this game. This is awful. I hate this. And then he slowly improved as the tournament went on. So yeah, I think Complexity could have just been cheekily, getting some new stuff under their belt in practice. And I could actually just see them winning over FaZe. Like it's not impossible to me.
Do you know what, Brandon? We always rely on you for our rogue pick. So go on, get us with it.
It's not rogue. Like when you take a look at the teams, unless I said NIP, but I'm not going to. I would probably say like I'd like to see Cloud9 at the World Finals. I feel like that would be good. Just if we are getting this like change in the meta, if it is really effective, the fact that they can just pick up the AWP when they want, they can be flexible, and then we start to see that generate success at the full finals, and they go to the World Finals and they do damage there. I feel like for that storyline and for Cloud9, that's kind of where I would place it, and that's kind of where I'd like to place it. But I like the idea of the complexity kind of narrative, but I'll pick someone else.
I'm just out of thought because Astralis currently leading it, and they're rumored to make roster changes. Do you think that this, if they do qualify, that delays those changes? Or, I mean, we obviously have no idea of if they are going to happen, when they're expected to happen. But would you keep your 5 if you did qualify? like for the time being, up until that event, that is.
I don't know how
Well,
like
the-
the roster lock even works.
Yeah.
I
I
think
don't know.
maybe the
They're
roster
quite
lock already
strict with
happened.
last,
I don't
aren't
really
they?
know. Yeah, I got no idea.
Yeah, it'd be quite tough for them. But I wouldn't imagine you want to change those players out because the World Final is not even that far away. I think it's only like 15 to 20 days after this one. So yeah, I know Brandon is eager to ask you something as well, STYKO, and then we'll go to closing out the podcast. But
Sure.
we have many different some consistencies on this podcast. One of them is Brandon looking a lot like Torsey, and we've seen some of our guests agree with that. Azza was one who was immediately like, "Oh my god, yes!" But another one is Donk. So Brandon, take it away. Ask STYKO whatever you want to ask about Donk.
Just what do you think about Donk, and is he deserving of this much hype that he's getting, and why is he the best player in the world and in CS2?
Best player in the world is quite a stretch. I did see a lot of his games. I'm gonna be honest, and it's wild because I couldn't come to like a great great outro for me to clearly understand what is making him so good, that he is performing so well. So first of all, he is obviously very consistent when it comes to comes to aim and the tools that he is taking. He is very methodical in the way he plays, which is rare to see such a young player to be this way. Another thing is that I spotted it on the demos a lot that he is quite, I don't want to say predictable or readable, but I would say he has his routines for every single round that he's sticking to no matter what. He has his routines for the rounds where he had like rifles, where he had pistols. He isn't like this kind of guy that will go out of the textbook CS in order to surprise enemy or carry the enemy. They're always doing something structured, very structured team. Okay, he gets his freedom, yes, but you can see that he kind of pre-plans what he's doing a couple of moves ahead, right? So that's another thing that is very rare in a young guy, that he doesn't just run around blindly and shooting people in the head because he's sharp and young and fast, right? Another thing is that he is rifling. Obviously, he's one of the first prodigies in a long time that isn't an AWPer from CIS region that is really, really strong. So that's a good and refreshing thing to see, because it opens up, it shows that even if you're young, it's achievable to break through rifling, and not in FaZe, but in team environment. That's beautiful thing to see, and it hopefully motivates a lot of players, young players, to kind of grind this way. What else? His inner timings are just really, really good. He's never getting caught off guard. Like literally, very rarely I see it where he just wasn't ready for a duel. So it all comes down to like individual skill and understanding of the game, and we don't really know how he improves that, because he is lacking experience. He didn't attend too many LANs, and those he did, I think he won the one in Belgrade over Virtus Pro. And he has a lot of online games happening, and it's hard to read in these online games how good he actually is, because a lot of times he's going to play against worse opposition, and then there's just questionable things being played against him, and he's ready for all of them. So I gotta give props to him for his individual skill. I think he's truly going to be, he's going to break through into international team if he knows English. I don't even know that. And he is going to have a really strong career in CS. However, I think a lot of things that he knows comes from experienced and tenured players in Spirit lineup, which is Chopper and Magisk to in a way. He's still very young, but he has experience at least. And the way they all developed, these three young players coming from Spirit Academy, is really admirable. Like, they know how to play Counter-Strike. They're very disciplined. They are not running around, without any clue. They are structured team that looks experienced, even though Artfrost, Zontex, and Donk, they're all very young. And with the whole career ahead of them, basically. And the props to Team Spirit, whatever they are doing to develop these talents, they're doing it great. And overall, whole CIS scene, I feel like they have, for some reason, this ability to transform the knowledge and experience into younger players in order to boost their careers from the get-go. And we see it in Monacy, we see it even in Wonderful right now, even in Donk, Zontix, Artfrost. They're all very, very capable of playing Tier 1 Counter-Strike.
Does that answer everything that you needed to know, Brandon?
Yeah, he basically agrees with me.
This is Brandon's prediction that he will be the best player. I think that was for episode 1.
I see him in. I think in a year he'll be on Cloud9.
Okay. Bold prediction.
Makes sense. I like that prediction.
We love Brandon's predictions. He always comes out with some lovely takes. But we're going to close this out. This has been the Pinnacle Stack. STYKO, before I do any of the closing statements, where can everyone find you? What are you up to? What's going on?
So right now you're not going to find me on the server playing, but hopefully that changes soon. That's my main goal, to change it actually, to be in a competitive grind set. But in the meantime, content is probably the easiest way for you to access me, where I, share what I know, what I learned with you guys, and hopefully it interests you. So YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter are probably my most go-to social media platforms where I'm active. You can reach out to me. I'm ready to help. You can join my Discord. I'm ready to help there as well. I'm active daily, and it's all fun, and I'm enjoying it so far. So be nice to me, otherwise I will stop.
So if you have any other questions that we didn't answer for STYKO, then you can be sure to go into his Twitch chat, ask him, leave him a comment on his YouTube, I'm on Twitter, any of those. And for the other guys, you can find the links down below in the description. And STYKO, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today, and thank you all for watching.